Might have heard of Reid Hoffman. He's a legendary Silicon Valley investor and entrepreneur. He co-founded LinkedIn. Everybody in tech goes to him for advice on how to make something huge. He's got a new podcast. It's called Masters of Scale. In each show, Reid talks to famous founders about what really happens as companies grow from zero to a gazillion. You don't even know how many zeros that is. Check out this roster of people that he talks to, famous founders like Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, Brian Chesky of Airbnb, Reed Hastings of Netflix, Sarah Blakely of Spanx. These are heavy hitters. You can really learn a lot. Stories you'll hear on Masters of Scale. Always honest, always useful, and also funny, okay? There's no jargon, no posturing. Get to soak up a lot of info in an entertaining, laid-back way. Subscribe to Masters of Scale on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you love to listen. Hello to all my 80s movie party people. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call, no names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hey everybody, it's your friend Chris Gethard. Welcome to another episode of Beautiful Anonymous. I feel so lucky to be a part of this thing. Just wanted to say quick thanks to everybody who supported Career Suicide. It went up on HBO on Saturday. It's on the streaming platforms now. Quick plug for this big thing in my life. But I want to just give a genuine thank you because the feedback to it was so positive online, and you do not expect that from the internet. As an entertainer, you learn to brace yourself. And making myself as vulnerable as I did with that thing, I was expecting some harsh stuff. There's only a handful of mean comments. So many of them were nice, and I know for a fact that's because the Beautiful Anonymous fans are out there leading the charge on that. And I just can't say thank you enough for supporting this podcast and the rest of my work, and also just being kind and promoting kindness and being outward with that kindness. I just really can't thank you enough. Very genuinely. Big news. The tour is finally happening. We're doing a series of tapings, live Beautiful Anonymous on the road, and they're coming soon. And we're going to go to a whole bunch of cities. I want to tour this thing all over the place. If I'm not coming to your area of the world just yet, your area of the U.S. just yet, I'm going to get there down the line. Anytime I'm not in the thick of it with other TV and stuff that has to anchor me to New York, I'll be there. In the meantime, tour starts May 30th. We're going to Vancouver, Canada. May 31st in Seattle. June 1st in Portland, Oregon. June 2nd, San Francisco, California. It's part of the Colossal Cluster Fest. You do have to buy a festival pass for those. The rest of these, it's not the case. Chicago on June 6th. Now, Chicago is one of the cities we're doing 2 shows. Early show, live podcast taping. Late show, live stand-up. You can also buy a combo ticket to both. Check that out. Ferndale, Michigan on the 7th, live podcast taping. Toronto on the 8th. Philadelphia on the 9th. That one's going to be a big show. Love Philly. Crossed paths with Philly in the past, but I'm willing to admit it, I was wrong. Philly is one of the great art towns on the East Coast now, and I cannot wait to see Philly. Arlington, Virginia on June 10th, 2 shows there. Early show podcast, late show stand-up. Buy a combo ticket, come out to both. Baltimore, 2 shows on the 11th of June. Early show podcast, late show stand-up. You get it. Asbury Park, New Jersey, my home state. We're finishing things off June 13th. 2 shows. Buy that combo ticket. Hang out for the whole night. I can't wait to meet fans of the show. Be there and hang out with you guys face to face. Be able to thank you for so much. So thank you. Can't wait to see you guys out there on the road. ChrisGeth.com. You can get tickets for all those right now. Go to ChrisGeth.com. Buy those tickets up. They're going to sell out, so get them quick. They're already moving because of all the online people who heard about it before it was actually mentioned on the show. So get those tickets right now. Now, last week's episode, our teenage caller, I loved that one so much. A lot of people said it was a really good look at a teenager's life. And some other teenagers were posting online. Kyle in the Facebook group, he was like, hey, I'm a teenager too. I'm going to break it down from my perspective how things were. I thought that was so cool, Kyle. Thank you for being such an active member of the group. Now, this week's episode is a real cool one. When this one came in, I was like, whoa. I was not expecting it. A lot of us right now, a lot of people on all ends of the political spectrum in America, I think, are trying to get active, trying to actually affect change. And, everybody knows when you listen, I'm from New York City. I'm an artist, very progressive. I see the protests happening, participating in things that appeal to me. You also see people in other areas, other lifestyles who very actively going at their thing. But I think a lot of us would agree. A lot of this activism, a lot of people, it just comes down to like, oh, I'm going to go on Facebook and just say stuff. I'm going to go preach to the choir. I'm going to create this echo chamber online, just say things. Today's caller wanted to affect change in the world, stepped up. studied, worked hard, is now filling one of the actual roles in our society here in America that has actual on-the-ground ability to change, affect people's lives, tells us what it's like to be on the inside of the legal system in a very specific way, tells us why she chose to do that, and at the end also gives us some advice on maybe how to deal with some legal things. Again, not actual legal advice that she can be held to, just her opinions on how this stuff works, the inner workings of a system that we all see, that we all know. And it was really fascinating, and I thank her. It's some people have been saying lately, some of the episodes are conversational, some of them are a little bit more like agenda driven. This one has that agenda vibe. I will not apologize for that, by the way. People call in, they want a platform now. They know this show is now a legit platform. They say what they have to say. She tells us about her life, why she was driven to do the thing she is. She's cool, fascinating, trying to make change, positive change in this world, and I thank her for it. Enjoy the call.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, you are Chris.
Yeah, I am. You really switched it up from the traditional hi. Is this Chris?
Well, I figure if I can't tell you my name, I should probably figure something else out.
Yes, you can't tell me your name, but you did inform me of my name.
I did, just in case you had forgotten. It's fine.
Well, it is funny. No one in my life, only Beautiful Anonymous listeners even call me Chris. It's a very funny thing. My wife calls me.
Do you go by Chris?
Everybody calls me Geth. Everybody calls me Gethard or Geth. Everybody does my last name.
I guess that works too.
Yeah. Pretty much all my friends in real life call me Geth. The Chris Gethard Show fans call me Geth. But the Beautiful Anonymous fans call me Chris. Makes me feel like a grown-up. It's cool.
Oh. Well, maybe I have to be honest. Part of that's probably because I actually had never heard of the Chris Gethard Show.
Yeah, I get this a lot.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. That's fine.
Anyways, how you doing over in New York?
How am I doing over in New York? I always answer honestly. I'll be honest. Pretty stressed out lately. All for good reasons. But yeah, stressed out. That's the honest answer.
That's fair. No, I appreciate the honest answer. I think that we ask each other too often, how you doing, and just expect the good and walk by. And I really appreciate the intentionality of people who actually want to know the answer.
Thank you. The intentionality. You're a very smart person. These words like intentionality.
Well, sometimes I try and fake it,
Really? Because you just nailed it, like super casual conversation-wise.
Well, good. Well, it's in my job description to know and learn things quickly. I'm a defense attorney.
Wow.
And so I meet people quite often and have to get to the bottom of a lot of things that are going on in their life, but also earn their trust faster than that, so that they're even willing to tell me some of the hardest stuff that they're going through in life.
Wow, that's a cool job. I'm glad I get to talk to you.
It's a pretty sweet gig. I actually was sure that I was not going to be an attorney, and went into college thinking that I wanted to do politics. I love that, campaigns, and did a little bit of that, helped out like local politicians, did a little work for a U.S. congresswoman when I was in college, and then was very distraught by like the lack of intelligence. That sounds harsh, but like these people are smart and they're not using the intelligence that they actually have to do good things. And I thought that was really irritating. So I said, okay, well, I'll go and study the law and be smarter than these people. So I did that instead.
So you tried to enter politics and to change the world. You're an ambitious person who wants to make it a better place. Felt like politics was a broken world, so you're now navigating the system of the law to try to affect some change in the world around you.
That's true, and part of being a defense attorney / I'm a public defender, and so part of that job is just being destroyed by the system every day.
Yeah.
So I don't win a lot, but
wow,
you still got to get up and help out.
You're a public defender. I have one of my best friends, is a public defender, guy I went to college with.
No way.
Yeah, in New York, and he has told me some
Oh wow,
stories, and
that's
yeah, he's told me some stories. It can sound brutal. I know, I'm not sure. I haven't caught up with him in a while about his job. I think him being friends with a comedian, I get the sense maybe sometimes I am a good outlet for him to talk about anything but his job. Um,
yeah.
but I remember in his early days, he handled a lot of like parole violations. It sounded so brutal because it sounds like the system is so hard to navigate that it seems like once you're in the sense I get, and you tell me, sense I get is that like once
Yeah.
you have broken a law and been convicted, the system is so hard to navigate. He made it sound to me like there's so many
Yeah.
ways to like break the law again that you're not even aware you're doing it. And that he had to have a lot of
Yeah.
tough conversations with people about the intricacies of laws that it's completely ludicrous that an average human being would even know the ins and outs of.
Yeah, and I think that's that's so true. And I can't even. I mean, I won't tell you where I'm at, but I'm in a city not as big as New York, but the biggest city in the state that I live in, and so we handle a shit ton of cases. But it's interesting to see how many people return to court, not necessarily because they're charged with a new crime, but because they have a probation violation.
Yeah.
And there's like two different classifications. There's essentially like what I would call like a real violation. Like you have a new charge or like you have done actual damage. And then there's technical violations. And I just thought, I'm going to put this out there and people are going to get mad. But I just read an article that like 600,000 people who are held by the U.S. government in the Department of Corrections are there because of technical violations. Now, I could have misquoted that entire thing, so sorry, all the people, or nobody if this doesn't air, which is fine too. But there's like a shit ton of people regardless. And that's just in like the federal system.
Wow.
In state systems, there are a plethora of other people who are being held just on technical violations. So like you didn't meet with your probation officer because your probation officer changed the time of your meeting the day before, and you couldn't change your work schedule because you're a person and you have 3 different jobs because you're poor and you're trying to make ends meet and put food on the table for your 6 kids, and you couldn't do it. And so you got violated and brought in custody, and then you lost 2 of those jobs,
Yeah.
And so then it's stupid. And like people can be on probation for forever. The state that I live in, there's something called lifetime probation, which is, I think, a worse punishment than sometimes even going to jail, because the rules that probation subject you to are rough. They're rough.
That's
But
crazy.
anyways, this is my happy life.
Well, you're fighting the good fight. You're trying to do some good, and that's more than most of us do. There's been so many times in my life where I've thought about I should go and try to actually do something hands-on to help people, and I don't because I'm scared and I'm lazy and all the other things that we all are. And you're someone who's actually crossed that. So I on behalf of all of us, I thank you sincerely.
Well, thanks. I think that I have to fight a lot more to tell people, like, the first question when somebody finds out that you're a defense attorney is like, well, how could you defend guilty people? And it's difficult because I love my clients. Like sometimes I am on the phone with them forever and they're yelling at me. Sometimes they're yelling at me in court, which is neat because there's a whole bunch of other people watching. Sometimes they give me like fist bumps and hugs when I leave court because they're happy. And anything in between that. But I think like we have to remember that everyone who enters the court system is alleged to have done something. And there's a lot of my clients who like just have to plead guilty to get out of jail. And there's just some people who like are in really shitty situations and like can't afford food. Like, yes, there are people who murder other people and rape other people. And like, yes, those people should be adjudicated. However, let's make sure that police are doing their job also and not just like throwing people on the ground. Because you read a police report and it's like, I gently escorted Mr. So-and-so to the hood of my car. And you get the squad video. And let me tell you, the difference in gently escorting somebody to the hood of your car and violently slamming them on the ground, people interpret that differently.
Wow. So you're really, What an interesting place for you to be in, because we're right now, the past few years in particular, there has been a lot of videos that show up of police, police operating in ways that people are questioning. You're someone who's like day to day. That's a part of your life. You're seeing how the actual justice system works, and you're saying that, from your opinion, being on the ground, it's kind of screwed up.
Yeah, and yes, I will 100% say that there are officers who do the right thing. I've seen officers like wipe clients' eyes if they're crying. Like, there are good people out there. There are good officers out there. But I think it's really important to continue to videotape them because we have a right to do that, but also because there are a lot of times where straight up officers will just lie in their report. And like I don't understand why they do that, because it's my job to watch the video. It's my job to read the report. And then if I walk up to the prosecutor and say, hey, I don't really understand how these two things can be like together. They're not the same thing that happened. What the hell's wrong with your officer? Then I'm still at a disadvantage if my client has like 4 other cases and this one just gets dismissed for a better resolution, but that officer gets to walk away and still do the same thing the next day.
Right.
If that makes sense.
So there's times where you see misconduct that can help your client, but it doesn't automatically trigger anything that will change that happening again in the future.
Correct. Because if my client is pleading guilty to another case, like let's say the client has 2 cases on the calendar that day, and the evidence is terrible for that officer on one of the cases, but the prosecutor says, well, if you plead to the other one, then this one just goes away. Then like, that's good for the client because it means only one conviction, but you also have to explain to the client, like, I know that the officers like screwed you. I get it. Let's like figure out how we can make like a civil complaint, even though that's a little bit out of my job purview. But this is a good deal for you because it does mean less jail time, because it does mean that you don't have to do anything else. It means you don't have to do programming, but it does mean that you like have to sit there and take it that you were just like assaulted by this officer for no reason.
Jeez.
Yeah. Which is like why I totally understand and like listen when clients just like need to yell too, because nobody's listening to them.
You must get stressed out a lot of the time, huh? I do, but I actually am very grateful. I've never been like necessarily anxious. I sleep through the night almost every night. It's just been recently. So this week, I had a contested hearing set that I had prepped for. So essentially I was challenging whether or not the officer should have stopped my client and whether or not the officer should have seized the vehicle that she was driving and then searched it, which is where he found evidence and contraband and illegal things. So I had prepped for that, and then client never showed up. So warrant issued, and then all that work is prepared for the next person who's going to do it. And then today I actually had a trial set that I actually thought was going to go, but it did not. And so those two things back to back, I was a little bit stressed out this week. Yeah. If I had your job, I feel like I'd go home every night. I feel like I would just I would have like a bunch of glass objects waiting in my house so I could just go home and just like smash them with a hammer just to get all the stress out. You ever do that? You ever like just take you ever just like buy a lacrosse ball and throw it through a window and just call the window guy and have him on retainer?
That seems a little destructive.
Hey, I'm a punk rocker.
But I support you.
What can I say? I'm a punk rock kid.
I heard the new hold music. It comes across, you know.
You like that? For anybody listening, a lot of complaints about our hold music being a little too grim, and I never heard it. Apparently, it sounded a lot like funeral music. So we now have a new playlist that I DJ, and it features my wife's band, a bunch of my friends' bands.
Yeah. which is, nice. I mean, I'm not into like the punk rock life nor music. That wasn't my era. I'm pretty young, so not really my style. But
That's
hey,
okay.
I support. But no, I don't break things.
Okay. Well, we're different that way. I would be smashing everything all the time, all these frustrations. So how does this work too? So you're young. You came in from, having a political background. It's fair to say it sounds like you have a little bit of an agenda of, I want to help. There's a certain system in place that I think is unfair. I'm doing, you have gotten in the trenches to do your part to, wow, there's a really jolly public defender somewhere in your office, huh?
So I'm in my office and the door is closed.
Yeah.
This is not atypical. Normally my door is open. I just figured that this would be much better for you and the sound folk. But let me tell you, sometimes people come back from court and they're just like, this fucking judge, I can't believe what they did. And you're just like, okay, everyone,
Wow.
chill.
Who knew?
And it gets really complicated because there are people in my office who are married to, which is pretty typical. But like married to prosecutors who are total like douchebags that people yell about, or like judges who've done something, and so then you're like, maybe just shh, because they're married to so and so whose office like two doors down.
Right. It's funny. I was just going to ask, like, I would have to imagine, are there prosecutors or judges that know you as like the young idealist who roll their eyes and stuff, and like, is that your rap? And
yeah, I mean, so a couple weeks ago, I was arguing this motion that would affect more than just my client, which is pretty irregular. Most of the time, you just argue a motion for your client and your client alone. But this was going to affect more than just my client. So I knew I had to like actually prepare more broad policy arguments, and I was making constitutional claims. And so when I was prepping all of that, and I like brought my rule book and I brought all of this argument that I had created with like this 3-prong argument and like all of these studies and like statistics, and I just like set it down on counsel table. And it's like in this courtroom where there's a whole bunch of stuff going on all at once. I'm not the only case on. And so I just like set everything down, and it's a judge that I had never appeared in front of. And I just like start arguing. And I'm just like, if anybody's going to listen to me, they're going to listen to me today. And I felt extremely passionate about this because essentially my client was following the rules of his conditional release, because we were between when he was charged and released out of custody and like the next hearing. And he couldn't afford to be on like a monitoring during that time. And so he was just going to get brought into jail because he couldn't afford it, not because he wasn't following the rules, which is a constitutional violation. Fun fact. But the judge interrupted me and then let the prosecutor argue. And then I asked to respond, and he gave me a little bit of space to do that. And then he ruled against me, and I turned around and one of my colleagues was like, I thought that your eyes were going to melt a block of ice because you were so pissed. And then I found out that he was actually going to get revoked and he was going to get brought into jail. And then I asked for it to be heard again the next day. And it was after like some argument. And I won. And I was stoked about it. But now our office is implementing a policy. But I actually ran across another judge to answer your original question. Also, fun fact, lawyers tend to talk a lot in circles. You hadn't noticed. And so another judge came up to me when I was in the courthouse about to go into court, and he was like, hey, I saw that you won, and I saw that you got it back on the calendar. That's pretty cool. And so he definitely knew that I was prepared and like was arguing and like wasn't going to let this go. So I guess I have a little bit of reputation, but it is difficult to do because a lot of the time you're focused on just the one client and what you can do for them. And sometimes the best option for them isn't necessarily like the greater policy goal that I personally selfishly would like to implement.
Right. But there's definitely times. So there's times where you're working with a client and it comes up that it's going to be a certain judge or a certain prosecutor, and you just have to look at the client and be like, we're fucked, right? Like, sorry, Sally, for that one. But there's got to be certain people where you're like, this person's just mean. This person's just mean and kind of cheats.
Yeah.
And I know who they are.
Yep. There's actually one prosecutor who loudly in the middle of court called me petty and pedantic.
Ooh, pedantic's one of those words I've never
really
known the meaning
for.
of. I've never known the meaning of pedantic, but I know it ain't good.
It's essentially the same thing. Like, you're very just like focused on these details that don't matter.
Wow. He's telling you grow up a little bit.
And I was like, look, you asshat, stop studying your freaking like flashcards for your other volunteer situation. Just stop.
Did you really use the word asshat in court? You've got to admire someone who can use the words pedantic and asshat in the same conversation. That's really it's really an impressive skill and quality. I need a moment to think about that wide breadth of vocabulary. You know what I think is a great way for me to take a moment is for us to hear from advertisers. We got advertisers. They help us bring this show to you for free. They have products. They have services. There's promo codes. Use them. Help your life, help the show. Check them out, and we'll be right back. I'm a very public person about the fact that I have been participating in therapy for well over a decade of my life. Big fan of therapy. Very happy to tell you about our next sponsor. Look, we all need to take a little bit better care of ourselves, right? Taking care of mental health, that is no exception at all. That's why today's sponsor, Talkspace, the online therapy company, makes it easy to connect with an experienced licensed therapist handpicked just for you for as little as $32 a week. Using Talkspace, you can send your therapist text, audio, video messages whenever you want. You can even do a live video chat. That's very modern. That access is a very cool thing. If you want to vent about work or family, you need to talk through something that's been on your mind, it is no problem. That's what a therapist is for, ready to help. It's a person who is there for you so you can get all your rambling thoughts out of your head. Somebody's there to listen to them, help you sort them out. That's what you need. Big thumbs up. You want to sign up, learn more, go to Talkspace.com/beautiful. There's a special offer for our listeners. You can use the coupon code BEAUTIFUL to get $30 off your first month. Show your support for the podcast. That is code BEAUTIFUL, Talkspace.com/beautiful. Talkspace is therapy for how we live today. Listen, everybody, you're out there. Get into your routines, right? You get up, you go to work. Maybe things are getting routine. Maybe things are getting routine in the bedroom. I don't know. It happens to the best of us. You want to spice things up, though, right? Maybe you've been fantasizing. You want to surprise your lover. Something new, something adventurous, maybe a toy, movie. Go to adamandeve.com. Limited time only. You get 50% off just about any item. That is not all. No. You select your one free item at 50% off. You will receive 3 free adult DVDs on inspiration. Okay, spice things up for real. 3 DVDs, find out exactly what you and your lover like, plus a free extra gift so sensual, can't even mention it on the radio. I refuse. I refuse to be responsible for that level of sensuality. I wield a very powerful platform here. My voice reaches all of you guys right in your ears, and I don't want your heads to explode when you see just how sensual I can get. Also, they throw in free shipping on your entire order. That's really great. Not kidding about that. Check out adamandeve.com today for this special offer. You get 50% off one item when you type stories for the offer code upon checkout. When you do, you get 3 free DVDs and a free extra gift and free shipping. Use that offer code stories at adamandeve.com. That is STORIES at adamandeve.com. Thanks so much to all the sponsors who make Beautiful Anonymous happen. Very excited to hear more about the inner workings of our American justice system. Let's get back to the phone call. Did you really use the word asshat in court?
I didn't know. I kept my shit together, and I didn't say anything to him. And I said, we're done. And then I got up and went over to where my client was, and my client was in custody. So he was in the box in the courtroom. So I couldn't physically be next to him. And so I was whispering to him. So we weren't technically being recorded, and gave him the spiel, and then we moved on. And so I didn't talk to the prosecutor about it necessarily. I just said, we're done. Okay.
Yeah.
So I call him an asshat behind his back.
Yeah. No, I picked up on that.
I can.
Yeah. I'm getting the sense that I was asking you if there's like any things you do to like unleash your stress, and I'm getting the sense this phone call may be one of those things.
Yes, I do. I also have a personal trainer in the way early hours of the morning that is super great to just like be awake and be energized.
So you're telling me
be happy.
You're telling me you wake up first thing in the morning, you personal train, you have somebody push you to your physical limits, then you crack your knuckles, you walk into the courtroom, and you get in fights with prosecutors all day because you're trying to take down the system.
Yep, that's my life.
Wow. That's cool. Here's something I'll say too that you might know more of than I do. Here's the thing that concerns me when you say that like this system is built in a way where, parole laws can just keep people in this loop of having to keep going back to prison, keep having to navigate the courts. Hearing that you've read, you said yourself, you're not certain this is true, but you just read there's 600,000 people kind of just floating in the federal system in this purgatory where they're not committing crimes. It's just that the lifespan of the crimes they have committed just won't ever actually die out. The thing that bothers me, you know what, the more I read about it, the more it just grosses me out, is there's actually something that I don't think everybody like reads into because maybe it's a truth we don't want to face is there's actually a lot of people who make a ton of money off of people getting imprisoned. Not the government.
Oh, yep.
There are people.
Oh, no, private companies.
There are people who are making millions of dollars off of prisoners staying in prison. And it's really, the more, I've read just a tiny amount about it, but you read even a little bit and you're like, whoa, there are people who have built, there are people who are paying for their mansions hoping that laws remain sort of like indecipherable and outdated so that there's a financial interest for poor people to go to prison so rich people can get richer. And it's nuts.
Yep.
And that's not me that's not me being some progressive idealist. It's just a fact. There's people who get rich off of poor people going to prison.
Yes, it is fact. I mean, even like from anything between the food that goes into prison to the calls, like the phone companies, that have the phones in prison. So like, let's say that you have an inmate brother. Sorry, you actually have a brother. Let's make a sister for you, shall we?
Let's imagine that my brother Greg is a hardened inmate. I would love that. I think he would love that too. My brother Greg, aka the Gregulator. Let's imagine that the world.
Okay.
Let's imagine that he's busted. What's a crime? What's one of the common crimes that you see come across your desk?
Well, so I am in gross misdemeanor and misdemeanor crimes, and so there's a lot of like trespass crimes or theft crimes.
Okay.
You wouldn't necessarily go to like federal prison forever, but if he happened to like come across my desk and I worked in the federal system, if he was convicted, the thing with federal prison is that he can be sent to any federal prison in America.
Right.
And so the judge, like the federal judge, doesn't get to decide. The Department of Corrections, I forget, they have some name. They get to figure out where he's going to go, depending upon space, depending upon the security level. And so let's say that he is now in prison in Arizona. That's not close to you or your family. The only way that you can have contact with him, / the only way that he can have contact really with the outside world, with his family, with people who are going to help him rehabilitate, is if he calls them, because you can't fly that far that often. And it costs so much money for you to take the call from prison.
So that costs more than a regular collect call.
Yes, like 6 times as much it is insane. And so like even from those companies that just charge people, like, and they don't charge the inmate, they charge the family of the inmate who haven't done anything wrong to take the call.
Not cool.
And the people who do like, if you are sent on electronic home monitoring or like some kind of like bracelet GPS monitoring, those companies make a crap ton of money, and the defendants are the ones who have to pay to be on that monitoring, like per day.
Really?
You can get a fee waiver depending upon if you're like public defender eligible or not.
I thought it was I thought like it was just companies that could get like hefty government contracts, and I'm sure there's a lot of that. But you're saying there's actually a lot of stuff that like the inmate and their family have to pay for, or else they go back to prison.
Yeah, or if get a DWI, you are going to be paying for programming, and that could be like $600. If you get a charge with some kind of license revocation, you've got to pay to put your license back in. Oh, so help you if you get arrested by a cop who's pissed off and just like throws your license like in the middle of a field, and then you have to get a new license. Bummer. And like my biggest thing, so I grew up in California, and California has the 3 strikes laws, and you should see and research how much money the people, like the actual prisons and the corporations who own the prisons, spent on lobbying to get 3 strikes to be a thing. Because essentially the rule is like, if you have 3 of these particular qualified felonies, then you're going to be in jail for the rest of your life, which means that they get paid.
Right. So inmates,
and so
maybe the people who are cynical about the prison system might say that the 3 strikes in for life means that someone effectively just became like a human cash machine for a bunch of lobbyists and the people they represent.
Yeah.
Wow.
I would recommend watching the Netflix documentary 13th.
13th.
Yeah.
Okay.
They do really good research.
Yeah, I gotta say, there's so much. I think there's so. Is it 13 or 13th?
13th, like the 13th Amendment.
Okay.
It's essentially making a parallel between slavery and the incarceration of individuals.
Yeah, it is. Because also, correct me if I'm wrong, felons can't ever vote again, right?
It depends upon the state. Actually, in Vermont, if you are in prison as a felon, they do allow you to vote. It's either New Hampshire or Vermont, but I'm pretty sure it's Vermont. They let you vote if you're in prison. But there are some states that even once you're done with probation, if you are a felon, you're not allowed to vote still. There are some states that say if you are still on probation or parole, you're not allowed to vote. But once you get off, you can get those rights reinstated.
Uh-huh. And if I may ask, is there any correlation between the strictness of those laws and areas of the country that maybe, just to cut to the quick, every time I've heard that there's places where felons can never vote again, I also have always heard that maybe those are things that target the Black community way more than any other community.
Yes.
In a way that's just so clearly, to me, rooted in like we haven't. Yeah, and also just like we just keep finding ways to not actually move forward from a lot of dark shit, and it's just not okay. It's just not okay.
It isn't.
It isn't okay.
And now it's essentially like we're not necessarily hating, arguably, quote unquote, we're not necessarily hating Black people or African American people or Mexican people or Hispanic people. We're hating the criminals. But right. if those particular races or ethnicities are overrepresented in the criminal justice system, then we are effectively saying that we're still keeping them down. Because if you, depending upon your charges, like you get your license, like your occupation license taken away, you're not allowed to live in government subsidized housing. Like you can't get loans to go to college for certain things. So like we're essentially stripping you of not only your rights, but also opportunity to pick yourself up and keep going once you've completed all the shit that we've said you have to complete.
Yeah. You're going to stay, you maybe made one mistake in your life, and that one mistake might dictate the fact that you have to stay poor and put upon and confused and scared literally for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and here's the tricky thing is that it's not just that you made a mistake, it's that you were caught making that mistake. When, let's talk about how many white people, granted, like I'm this, can I say this? I'm this like white, young, blonde girl walking around trying to gain rapport with my clients. And like, I often talk to my clients about this issue and be like, look, I know I'm not getting pulled over for this same shit that you are. But I'm willing to fight for you because I think it's total bullshit that you were. / I'm so sorry, Sally. This is just a rough day for me.
That's okay. Hey, you get it out. Okay. You get it out. You do whatever you have to do. Okay. I want to be your human stress ball on the other end of a phone. I'm your stress ball. You get it all out.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So that's Yeah, that's the hiccup. It's that, all these people are talking about like the other, the criminal, the person who can't be redeemed. And I'm sitting here saying, you just didn't get caught doing whatever it was that you did. And also, like, I don't think that Brian Stevenson has this really great line about how we're not as bad as the worst thing we've ever done.
Yeah.
And I take that to mean that there's nothing in this world that you can do in which you can't be redeemed for.
I think that's a really beautiful thought. Right?
Yeah.
And isn't that like the core message of so many, like, when you look at the positive sides of religion, isn't so much of Christianity forgiveness, turn the other cheek, move on.
Yeah.
Hate the sin, love the sinner. It's crazy.
Right.
But I know it's so, even outside of like your world, like just to like connect with it on my end, like you saying like you have to look people in the eye and say like, I know you're dealing with some shit I'll never have to deal with. Like you're getting pulled over for stuff that I wouldn't get pulled over for. And people think that's not real. There's people who think that's not real in life, but even in my life, I just was asked to get, I do all this stuff, especially with the one-man show I did. It's all about mental health, and a friend of mine asked me to give a talk she works at a public library in Elizabeth, New Jersey. It's a city that has some rough edges. And
cool.
Yeah, and she wanted me to talk to some kids about mental health stuff. And I was very flattered to do it. And I went in, felt like such a putz. Because about halfway through my talk, I was like, these kids, I'm sitting here telling these kids what I did. And I grew up about 20 minutes from here. And my life could not have been more different as far as some of the advantages I had and disadvantages I had. Like, I'm sitting here trying to inspire these kids, saying, like, at a certain point in my life, I just, like, set some money aside and said, man, like, I'm just going to really go for it. And they're all looking at me like, yeah, we can't set money aside. End of story. Yeah. Like 14-year-old kids, like they're looking at me. And honestly, I saw them rolling their eyes. And I felt it, so I was like, oh, yeah. I'm talking about like, oh yeah, just set a couple $1,000s aside when you get older, like save up and then give yourself a safety net. And it's like, no, we literally hang out in the library because we don't have families. Like some of these kids are on their own and they're 14 years old and I'm sitting here rambling about set some money aside. It's just a different life. I grew up in a suburb. They grew up in a city. I look different than they do. Life's a little easier for me. It sucks. I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, but I think that you got to give yourself some credit because you're willing to have a conversation. And my guess is that you didn't just ramble about putting money aside. You were also talking about real things that you've experienced and like the strategies that you've used and the people that you reached out to, which, yes, some of those people may have been your family, but some of those people could be like random people that you just happen to be connected with. And if those kids can find those people too, or like realize that if they're going through some really shitty times and like are trying to figure out like what depression or anxiety or like all of these real stressors that these kids are dealing with, then if they hear only part of what you're saying and use some of that too, that's just as helpful. Even though they're not able to maybe put money aside, they're able to do other things to help them tangibly.
Well, I did get a chance to tell him about Melissa Blevins, who taught drama in my high school, was the one teacher who was ever nice to me. And I told him how if you can find one adult that really has your back, it goes a long way. Melissa Blevins, still teaching in New Jersey, changed my life.
Shout out.
Big time.
Nice. Yeah.
What's your life?
And they can all identify with that.
I hope so. I think so. Who knows? I want to know a little bit about your life outside of when you're trying to do your best to get on the ground and change the world in a grassroots way. This is an amazing, beautiful thing you do. What's the rest of your life like, though?
Well, I'm trying to get it together. I have been very privileged in the sense of I grew up pretty middle class, but I've definitely experienced a lot of just negative things that have happened in my family life. When I was a freshman in college, my dad called me and told me that he had 2 strokes. He lived across the country from me, has always kind of lived across the country from me. My parents split when I was young, which was weird because he was no longer able to walk or like talk in what people would call a normal fashion. I can still understand what he's saying. It just takes him a little while to do it. He is no longer independent, which is a really big thing for him. and I'm not a psychologist in any way, but if I was to guess, he has been going through depression ever since then, which is difficult to deal with as far as like being the daughter of somebody and trying to help them be better, or like have a mind state that's more positive instead of just always negative, or like having this martyr syndrome-ish situation.
Yeah.
Which has been difficult.
You know what's really fascinating about that, if I may?
Yeah, go for it.
I asked you about what your life was like, and you immediately talked about, again, trying to help someone else. Someone who's more in your personal life than the random people who come across your desk via the files that build those relationships. You're always thinking about others, huh? But you taking care of yourself in a real way? I'm putting the screws to you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's oof.
Gethard got you. Gethard got you right there.
Yeah, he did.
Got you.
He did. Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy being with friends and like trying to make space and make time to like hang out at the end of the week, or like go grab lunch in the middle of the week to just like catch up with people. I love to travel and like see folk. I have several different things scheduled for the month of May to like go and do and just like take off and breathe, see some shows and see some like people that I have missed in my life. I have recently chosen / I haven't really dated a lot. It's mostly, I think, you're going to tell me it's because I like taking care of other people. I'm just going to anticipate. But I think like the fear of being vulnerable and not being able to be independent has definitely made me afraid. And I have recently decided that being afraid of something is not a good enough reason to not do it. So I have recently met this character. Actually, fun fact. Well, no, I'm not going to tell you. No, scratch that. So I
don't get the fun fact?
This fun character.
I thought I was going to get a fun fact.
No, because
give me like 3 or 4 fun facts.
It's like actually revealing.
Yeah. No, I don't want to put anybody in jeopardy in any way, but did have to point out that you really blue-balled me on that fun fact. Oh, I wanted a fun fact. You can't say fun fact and then not give a guy a fun fact. I'd rather not know there ever was a fun fact than know there was a fun fact that I don't get to know. You know what I think are some fun facts? Are the facts about the various products and services that happen via our advertisers. So check these things out, and we'll be right back with more phone call. Attention, fans of John Gabris. I count myself among fans of John Gabris. I've known Gabris many years. I substitute taught Gabris's level 2 improv classes. That's how long I've known John Gabris, okay? These earwolf fans who think I'm some emo dope who can never make a joke. I've been around. Once coached Team Gabris was on for a year, the legendary Fwan. Watched Gabris do an improv scene where he licked Ellie Kemper's teeth. Feel free to ask him about it, but leave her alone. She's a dignified person, not like Gabris. He's an animal. His premium podcast, The Layman, is back for its 2nd season on Stitcher Premium. He loves science. John does. Everybody knows that, but also finds it pretty hard to grasp. Not surprising. In The Layman, he goes to the experts, doctors, exploring the frontiers of the mind, outer space, and beyond. He asks them to break it down in terms we can all understand. Hear John Gabris chat with molecular scientists, stem cell researchers, many more in 5 whole new episodes of The Layman. Gabris is a great guy, one of the funniest people in the game. I've had a lot of love for him since I met him way over 10 years ago. And to learn more about The Layman, hear episode 1, go to StitcherPremium.com/Layman. That's LAYMAN, StitcherPremium.com/Layman. Thanks again so much to all of our sponsors. Now, let's finish off this phone call. But did have to point out that you really blue-balled me on that fun fact.
I know, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
But
you don't get all the fun facts all the time.
Not all the time. But yeah, so I've enjoyed like getting to know this guy and we're going to go have dinner. And I was excited because I actually get to leave early instead of being in trial. So I get to spend more time with him tonight.
Nice.
So like that's kind of taking care of myself for me, which is a weird space to be and like trying to gauge how selfish I can be with like exploring that new relationship.
That's cool. Is it tough to build a new relationship when you're someone who, I mean, you started that chunk by going like, I have scheduled some time for myself in May to have a few days. Like, is it tough to start dating when you're like, so I have to schedule my free time 6 weeks out? I hope that's amenable to you.
Yeah, especially since he like has identified himself as definitely a planner, which is cool. Except I definitely have a lifestyle that's more like flexible. Like I'm just going to get on a plane and go here, or like I have free time this afternoon, and so I'm going to go do this instead of necessarily having everything scheduled. Except for like vacations and stuff, they definitely have to be scheduled much further in advance.
Yeah. This brings up something that I want to ask about. This is a rumor I've heard. I wonder if you would know if it's true. And I don't know if you're a part of this. I've heard that because being a lawyer can be such a grind, especially when you're in public practice, whether that's public defender, prosecutor, whenever you're in that, not, private practice where things can probably be a little bit more self-determined. I have heard that lawyers party hard. True or false?
True.
And I want to be clear, I mentioned that I have a friend who's a public defender. This is not something I heard from him. But I've heard through the grapevine that, like, some of the lawyers who are, like, the day-to-day lawyers, like, they'll do, like, a mountain of cocaine if they can find it. I've heard that.
Yep.
Cocaine is, like, huge in that world, huh?
Yeah.
Damn. Lawyers are breaking the law all the time, huh?
Which is the most ironic part. Because, so there's, like, I don't know how they do it elsewhere, but I would imagine it's similar. But there's this huge party that happens once a year where I practice.
Whoa.
And
I'm liking this story. I'm going to like this one. I can tell you already. So there's one huge party where you work. Once a year, they have a huge party. Okay.
Well, it's not where I work necessarily. Like the management is like, ooh, maybe don't do that. We don't, like our office doesn't promote it, nor do they organize it. But it's like a group of attorneys, mostly defense attorneys, who like throw this huge party. There's like, there's a lot of music, like live music, a lot of drinks, just like fancy. Like you've got to be dressed to the nines. And it happens once a year. And when I worked in the office that I'm working now as a law clerk, when I was in law school, I was invited to this party. I did not attend, so everything I'm saying is hearsay. However, I was told and recommended to leave said party by 7 p.m.
Because it gets so nuts?
Because by 7 p.m. is, yes. And, like, people are doing cocaine in the back, like, around the corner in the, like, attic. Not in the attic, in the alley, rather. And just, like, crazy things going down. And the worst part about it is that, especially the defense attorneys at that party, like, they're the ones who are representing people who are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. I mean, if anything speaks to the inequality of the class divide, it's the fact that the lawyers representing people for drug offenses freely feel a lot of freedom to do drugs at the time. So you're saying public
we got the hookup if you need it.
Oh Jesus, I can imagine. I can just imagine. So public defenders, they throw parties that are like parties from 80s movies.
Yeah.
Where it's like everybody, like people getting naked and jumping in a pool, and like a guy in a chicken costume doing the chicken dance, and then everybody like beats the shit out of him and hangs him from his underwear in a tree branch.
Yeah, I haven't seen the chicken, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, also it totally makes sense as far as like work hard, play hard, like trying to relax. I mean, one of the first things that you see when you go into any law school, if you go into like their what is it called, like student affairs or equivalent office, there are handouts about like where the nearest AA meetings are, because the profession is just so racked with with just abuse, like substance abuse in general.
Well, I'd have to imagine like you're working long hours, it cuts you off from having a social life, all the other people you're with are also in the same loop of life you are, it gets very depressing. You're seeing a lot of, I mean, I would have to imagine there's times where you're defending people where you're like, oh, this person actually did some horrific stuff, but I've got to step up and do my duty as a defender. There's the other heartbreaking thing where you're like, this is a person who is a really good person just trying to get back to their family, and I feel responsible that I can't figure out how to get them out of this cycle that just won't let that happen. And you're in it. And so there's a lot of people who maybe work stressful professions where they could go have a drink at the end of a night. But then the hours are so long that it's like, well, I've been working on these 3 trials and it's taken the last 2 months, and I've got 2 months worth of aggression to get out and partying to get out. And I would imagine it just makes everything so extreme that when it's time to let loose, it must get out of control fast.
Yeah. And I think it's hilarious that you think we prep a trial in 2 months. But
how many months does it take to prep a trial?
Yeah, that's like days situation that you're talking.
Days?
If it's like a big trial, like felony trials and stuff, people prep more. But like for the trial that I had set today, like I was prepared and we were ready to go and it was going to be fine. And like we had like some kind of defense, but I prepped it for 4 or 5 days. I've had the client for several months, but like real prep 4 or 5 days.
Yeah. This guy you met.
And
how'd you meet that guy? How'd you meet that guy? How do you even meet somebody when you work this schedule you're working?
Yeah, I met him online, and it's actually, I feel like kind of a win because he is not a lawyer.
Yeah, most lawyers dating other lawyers? I would imagine, because that's the only other people who get the schedule, right?
Yeah, or like, understand that we laugh at really terrible things.
I mean, the comedian, I mean, if there's anybody who's laughing harder at dark stuff than lawyers, I would bet comedians. We are ruthless people. So we can have a contest about that if you want.
Yeah.
You think you're going to you want to stick with the public defense for a long time?
Yeah, I cannot see myself practicing or doing like any other type of litigation at all. I think oftentimes about like if I would ever cross to a prosecutor / they make a shit ton more money than I do, if I don't live in a price parity state. But it would take the supervisor giving me discretion. So the power in the criminal justice system lies with the prosecutor. They decide how to charge you. They decide in what order they will charge you. And that essentially can determine your fate. And, they also determine like what the offers are and like whether or not they're going to give you more like treatment or more programming instead of jail time. But a lot of the times what happens is we think, oh, prosecutors have all this discretion. It's great. They only like put people in jail who are terrible people. And that's true some places. That's true in places where the supervisors are great. Here, where I practice, that's not the case. And they like talk about all their discretion, but they don't use it. So as long as I'm litigating, I'll do public defense unless I can find a supervising like district attorney who will let me do more of what I want to do.
Do you think it's the right way?
I can see me leaving to do like policy, like criminal justice policy work for like a government agency or like a non-governmental organization to like try and influence how we do things.
Like you should wind up at the ACLU someday, right? That would be, you sound like right?
That would be fun. I did a little bit of work with the ACLU when I was in law school, not like employed by them, but like working with them in order to like change certain laws, which was really fun. And they have a lot of money also. They have a shit ton of more money now, which is kind of
yeah. Donations rolling in. Donations rolling in the past 7-8 months for sure.
Yeah, ain't nobody mad about that. So now they have a lot more freedom to choose where they're going to go and help.
Now, what happens, honestly? Let's say someone comes along and says to you, hey, I work for a company. I work for a firm. We've observed your style in court. We heard that you were good. We came. We checked you out. We really like the cut of your jib. You have a certain you seem very smart. You have a je ne sais quoi that we really support. We want to bring you into a private practice. You're going to be defending some corporations. The morality of those corporations is questionable, but you're going to make $10 million a year.
Fuck no, I'm not doing that.
$10 million a year? Because those conversations happen sometimes, right?
They do. They do.
Wow.
I can't because essentially what's going to happen is those two corporations that are fighting, everyone in that situation is going to walk out just as rich as they were because the corporation's the one who's going to take the hit, not any of the people.
Yeah.
And like the shareholders may take the hit, but none of the people actually involved.
But
and
you can honestly say
I'm
you
not able to
personally
have like a client relationship with them.
Wow, I've sold out for like $600. Have you heard some of the ads I've done on this podcast? Have you heard some of these ads that I've done?
Yeah.
You pay me like $800. I'm like, I'm renovating my house. I guess I can get the maybe I can get the marble
And
if I
you're
talk
in.
about this. They're gonna
Yeah.
kill me.
Well-
Mid-roll. I'm gonna get an email from Mid-roll, Gretchen Baker. Get an email from Gretchen Baker. I've sold out
You
for.
sold out.
Oh yeah, sell out. No, I try not to sell out. I try to maintain some sense of decency and morality with it. But we live in a capitalist society.
We do. We 100% do. But I think it's important to stick to what like makes me happy because I can do this job and like sometimes the really shitty hours and like the crappy pay because I love it. Like I love my clients and I love being able to look them in the eye or stand with them when they're being like sentenced to something and say like, I at least tried to give you a voice. And the worst part about it is that some of my clients are like, when are you going to go and like, be a real lawyer or like, when are you going to go and like make more money? They're like, well, you're good. Like, why don't you just leave and get paying clients? And I was like, okay, well, thank you. I am a real lawyer. First of all, this plaque on my office wall tells me that I'm certified, but yeah. So like, I try and take it as
you're a good person,
as well as you can, but
fighting the right fights.
Well,
you seem uniquely in a position where you might be able to actually help listeners listening. If someone finds themselves tangled up in the law from the very beginning, like early process, whatever it is, they've either done something or they've been accused of doing something. How do you behave? What do you do? Like, what do you do to make as few mistakes as possible?
Well, first, this is not legal advice. None of you are my clients.
Hell yeah. Nice.
Oh, that's a thing.
You're not a lawyer right now, and I'm not a therapist. Let's just all pretend those things are true.
Yes. Right. I'm a lawyer, just not your lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
So always talk with a lawyer before you do anything, before you talk with the police. Let me tell you, the number of like statements that I get from clients who just like, we're trying to help the police. The police are not trying to help you ever. They're not trying to help you. Like that's how you have to think about it because they're going to use any statement. They literally, everyone knows what Miranda said. They're literally going to use it against you. And like, don't give them anything unless they have to work for it. So for example, if you get pulled over for speeding and they stop and they're like, oh, why I pulled you over? And you're like, oh yeah, I was going 100 in a 50-mile-an-hour place. No, actually, officer, I have no idea why you pulled me over. Can you please tell me? Because as soon as you say so, you've admitted. Literally say nothing. And call an attorney. And if you cannot afford an attorney, that is perfectly acceptable. Just know that you're going to spend some time in jail before that attorney can get to you.
So you're saying even upon being pulled over, keep your yap shut. What's the earliest that it's appropriate for me to ask for a lawyer?
As well, if you're pulled over for speeding, you're welcome to have an attorney, but just this, like, okay, if I pull you over, yo, Chris, you know why I pulled you over?
No, ma'am, I don't. Why don't you fill me in? I'm keeping my yap shut. You got something to say to me, 5-0? You got something to say to me, 5-0? You say it.
Exactly. And then, okay, can you step out of the car? Why? Am I under arrest? No. Okay, then am I free to leave? No. Okay, well then am I under arrest? Because one of those two things is true. Either you're free to leave or you're under arrest. And the courts can sparse out like some differences, but never allow them. Oh, I have a great story for you. Never allow them to search your car. For example, we had an experience where there was a guy who got pulled over. Officers asked to search his car. He said, yeah, sure, what else? Police are searching the car. They don't really find anything. And then he's like kind of looking antsy, walks over to the officer and he's like, hey, I got something to tell you. Yeah, what's going on, man? There's a person in my trunk.
Whoa.
Spoiler alert, that person is alive. That person is just hiding because that person has the warrant. Well, likely the police officers weren't going to be allowed to search the trunk unless he consented to it. So don't ever consent to any searches. Don't tell them anything that you don't have to. Just let them do their job.
So if you're harboring a criminal in your trunk, let them find that out for themselves.
Yes, a fugitive, not a criminal.
Okay.
It was all alleged at that
alleged,
time.
right? Okay. My bad.
Yeah, always. That's my favorite word. Alleged.
Yeah, allegedly.
Alleged. Yeah, I need to have it written someplace across my window.
So it sounds like the central core advice you can give any of us out there is if you find yourself on the wrong side of the law in any way, your instinct needs to be to protect yourself.
Yes.
And not help anybody else.
Yes, and if an officer says, well, only guilty people get lawyers, I don't give a shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That may or may not be true. That officer just is telling you anything he can. And he can lie to you. He can lie to you. Legally, it is okay for officers to lie to you if you're in interrogation, to make you think that you're in more trouble, to make you think that the consequences will be higher, to think that they have evidence that they just don't have.
So they can straight up say to you, hey, we arrested a person who says they sold you 2 pounds of weed, and that person can just be a figment that they made up.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they're not trying to help you.
Yeah. And aren't they going to, I've been pulled over a bunch of times. When I was a kid, I drove like a maniac. And I always tried to be polite and helpful because I always had a great fear of coming off antagonistic. Like, am I going to set a cop off? Cops have a very short fuse, and you can smell that from the outset of these conversations. Yeah, I mean, you can do it in a respectful way. Like, no, officer, I don't know why you pulled me over. Like, can you tell me? Like, be respectful about it, but also, like, you don't have to give them anything that you don't want. Yeah. 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 All right. Well, I hope when that day comes. But again, this is not legal advice for anybody. I only have a certain number of clients. Yeah, for sure. No, I get it. I will say on my end, I know you said you're not in New York, but I will say if I ever come on the wrong side of the law, I hope I wind up with a defender like you because you seem like you really care. Thanks. People who care are in short supply these days. Yeah, that's true. That is true. Yeah. You have anything fun planned the rest of this week? This week, let's see. I got on Saturday my HBO special is premiering at the Tribeca Film Festival, and I'm freaking out. Congrats! That's legit. Thanks. I mean, as far as someone who's living a very public, ego-driven life, I'm doing good. Talking to you makes me, I'd like to convince myself that through my work, I do a little bit of good for the world. But at the end of the day, I think that's true. Well, at this end of the day, I'm still in the entertainment industry in New York, living an easy life, and I have to remind myself to enjoy that and not get caught up and convince myself there's bigger problems with that than there are. I want to be grateful for the things I have, not scared of them or freaked out by them. That's me. Sure. That's what I got. Well, let me tell you, when I walk home or when I walk to work and I'm listening to Beautiful Anonymous, I laugh out loud and people look at me like I'm crazy, but it helps me either decompress or get excited for whatever I've got planned. So you're doing good. That means a lot to me. I honestly can say that means a lot, that if there are people who are doing more than I am to help the world and I can be the court jester that helps them blow off some steam, that to me is a very good reason to do what I do. So thanks for letting me know that. And we've just got a little bit of time left. I don't know if there's any last minute messages you want to get out there about you, your life, what you do, who you are. But our time is coming to a close. I really like ostriches. That is a fun fact that I'll leave you with. What? That's yeah. I think they're awesome. They are incredibly stupid creatures, but they're hilarious. Also, they're really strong, so if you stand next to one of them and they kick you in the head, you could die. They're like aggressive dinosaurs. They're like evil, mean, aggressive dinosaurs. But they're so adorable, and they run funny. Everything about this call just changed in my mind. The last 60 minutes have now been totally changed. You like ostriches? I don't trust you anymore. I trusted you more than any other caller ever, and now I don't trust you at all. No.
I can't let all your trusts go. No, they're good, I promise. I've like held a little baby ostrich.
Thank you so much, caller, for letting us know about the legal system, although I do have to say that your public endorsement of ostriches was concerning at best, troublesome to its core, and makes me question everything. It makes me wonder if any of the prior hour we talked was even true, because you sounded like such a good person, and ostriches are so scary, I don't get why you were into them. But thank you for calling, and thank you sincerely for everything you do, all jokes aside. It's very, very cool. It makes me feel good about the world hearing that you're in there with your mindset. Thank you to everybody who listens to this show. You're the reason it happens. It keeps going, keeps building, and it's so cool of you to do that. And thanks to the people here on the ground who are making the show happen behind the scenes. Jared O'Connell and Harry Nelson in the booth today, helping get me through this thing. Reverend John Delore, Greta Cohn set the show up in its early days. Shellshag does all the music throughout. Support Shellshag, they're incredible artists. You want to know about me, where I'm getting out on the road and stuff? ChrisGeth.com. Check it out. And if you like this show, one very easy thing you can do to support it, go to Apple Podcasts, rate, review, subscribe. Genuinely, that helps so much more than most things. And it's an easy thing that'll take you 30 seconds. So thanks so much for doing that. Thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week with more Beautiful Anonymous. Today's show was sponsored by Talkspace, the online therapy company that believes that therapy should be affordable, confidential, and convenient. A Talkspace therapist can help put you on the path to a happier life. Big fan of therapy here. No stigmas on my end. Thumbs up to therapy. You want a special offer? Great. We got a special offer for our listeners. You visit Talkspace.com/beautiful. Again, that is Talkspace.com/beautiful. Next time on Beautiful Anonymous, I think any old fan of the show is going to be as surprised as I was. Wait, do I recognize his voice? Wait, remind me which call you were. Whoa! Wow! I can tell you, I had a feeling. I knew I recognized your voice, and I knew it was a while ago. I would say this is amazing, because I want to be clear, this is not a setup. You did not leave a voicemail. You got through randomly again, which is astounding. That's next time on Beautiful Anonymous. Today's show was sponsored by Talkspace, the online therapy company that believes that therapy should be affordable, confidential, and convenient. A Talkspace therapist can help put you on the path to a happier life. Big fan of therapy here. No stigmas on my end. Thumbs up to therapy. You want a special offer? Great. We got a special offer for our listeners. You visit Talkspace.com/beautiful. Again, that is Talkspace.com/beautiful.
Hey, do you like movies?
Ben Affleck's performance in this movie will outlive us all.
Do you like arguing?
I'm gonna say that you're insane.
Do you like movies and then arguing about them with like people or strangers on the internet or Twitter or whatever?
Never-ending Story goes in the canon over Ghostbusters?
Yeah, are you serious?
No way!
I am Amy Nicholson, and I am the host of the show The Canon, where every week we debate whether or not a film deserves to be anointed into the canon of all-time classic flicks.
It is a masterpiece unto itself.
If you want to weigh in, listen to the show. See you there.
You don't get any better!
This has been an Earwolf production, executive produced by Scott Aukerman, Chris Bannon, and Colin Anderson. For more information and content, visit earwolf.com.